Let me begin by thanking you for allowing me to participate in this year's conference virtually. As all of you know, I have been participating in this conference from its inception and have been usually do so in person. This year, however, our schedule here in the Congress has been pushed and modified and in some manners just downright canceled in many instances. But in this case, we are in Philadelphia holding our annual retreat that is usually held during the President's holiday, President Week, in the month of February. And consequently, I had scheduled myself to be with you, but I have to be with my colleagues in Philadelphia while this conference is taking place. Let me thank particularly Melinda Dowling, who has been a stalwart with this conference every year, and Lloyd Moore for all of his work. The two of them have worked for years alongside David Rivers, who all of us are missing in a very sincere way. David was the glue that kept this conference together. He was also the brain behind my Environmental Brain Trust every year that I host on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus. I leaned on him heavily to pull that conference together every year, and he did so with the kind of aplomb that only David Rivers could constantly pull into focus. He was a go-to guy for many of us, as I said, during his transformation. All of us are going to miss him. Now, this conference, as all of you know, is really a conference of two significant groups, and I want to get their names right: the National Environmental Justice Conference and Training Program, and the National Conference on Health Disparities. David was the founder of that Conference on Health Disparities, and it was sort of a backdrop to my brain trust on environmental justice. Now, I did not tell you, all of you are familiar with my philosophy of governance. I always say that I make it my business to try to do the things that are necessary to make this country's greatness accessible and affordable for all of its citizens. If it is housing, I want it to be accessible and affordable. If it's education, accessible and affordable. And certainly, if it's health care, it's got to be accessible and it's got to be affordable. Now, as it relates to your work, once you determine that it is accessible and it is affordable, there kicks in the oversight that many of you need to conduct. Will this program be any harm to anybody? Yeah, it may be accessible, it may be affordable, but will it wreak any harm upon anybody? That is to say, if we are going to have a system in place that may not maintain clean air for people in the community, safe drinking water for school children, whatever it may be that we'll make it accessible and affordable, will it bring any harm to anybody? That's the assessment that has to be made once the program is put in place. And if we come to the conclusion that it may be harmful in some way, then it is your professional duty to take corrective measures to make sure no harm comes to anybody who may be affected by the program. And you come together in this way to share experiences, find out what may work in one community and may not have been tried in another community, or what went wrong in one community and may need to be modified or corrected in another community, or how to do it. That's why we have these conferences. It's always good to see each other once again and to interact with each other. But when you can do that, and on top of it all, develop policies and procedures that will safeguard those things that we may be doing to help make life better for those who are destined to come after us, then that's what it ought to be about. So if I were there with you today, I would be asking you to take a hard look at what we have done here in the Congress with the American Rescue Plan. A plan that, as you know, a lot of people say lift about half of the children who were living in poverty at the time of its enactment out of poverty. But that program, as you know, expired on December 31st, and we had it in this proposal that everybody calls Build Back Better, and that has not been done yet. So we're now entering the third month since that program went into effect, which means that a lot of those children that were brought out of poverty with the enactment of the program early last year really went back into poverty at the end of the year. And we've got to do something about that. So those of you who are affected, or your communities may be affected by this, we need to join into this fight and make sure that we do what is necessary to make that happen. There are other parts of that rescue plan that may or may not be working as well as it should. Find out what's in the plan. Find out what it should be doing, if we can do anything to improve upon its delivery of services. And then while you're doing that, take a look at another plan that we just put in place here in the Congress that we call the Bipartisan Infrastructure Program. That bill is going to be fixing a lot of bridges. It's going to be repairing a lot of roads, even building out some new ones. And that's part of your job. We want to repair bridges, and that's kind of safe. But we want to build roads, and that may incur some environmental issues. And so you've got to make sure that the good that comes from building a new road does not cause harm by ruining the environment. And that's where you step in. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to not get so carried away with the rhetoric that surrounds these programs until we forget that there are some responsibilities that must be adhered to while we're implementing these programs. And that's what this conference is all about. Trying to do what is necessary to make this country's greatness accessible and affordable, but at the same time, ensuring that these things do not cause any harm upon anybody that may need to benefit from them. Now, we just finished celebrating Black History Month, as we do so often. I feel compelled to mention this because of all that's swirling around us, this notion that people have been pushing now since last November, something they call critical race theory. And I know you've been hearing it in your communities, you've been reading about it, in the newspapers, hearing about it, over the televisions. But I want to say something about that I think, if you really think about it, you got to ask yourself, why all of a sudden, under the notion of critical race theory, we see people banning books? And for some strange reason, there are books written by people of color on subjects that we are now saying we don't want any subject taught in our schools that may make children, especially white children, uncomfortable. Well, let me tell you something. Even at my age, sometimes it's something less than comfortable to discuss the institution of slavery. But slavery was a reality in this country for better than 2 centuries. And it's a part of our history that cannot be erased. And we will do well to embrace that history and do what we can not to violate what George Santayana once said to us: if you fail to learn the lessons of history, you're bound to repeat them. Hopefully we've learned some lessons of history, one of which I've been using quite a bit in the last several weeks. I have been telling the story of Thomas Edison's great invention, the light bulb, that all of us benefit from every day. And all of us learned about when we were in grade school. Thomas Edison, the greatest American inventor of all time. Yes, he invented the light bulb, but what we did not see in those classrooms was the fact that Thomas Edison did not perfect the light bulb. He couldn't get the thing to work. He could get it to come on, but it would overheat and go out again. And then somebody told Thomas Edison about a guy who was living up in Boston, Massachusetts, who had invented something called a filament. And Thomas Edison was led to believe that if he could get that filament and put it into his light bulb, it might not overheat and might stay on. So Thomas Edison went up to Boston to search this guy out, and he found him. His name was Louis Latimer, the son of former slaves. And they collaborated. And Thomas Edison took his light bulb and took Louis Latimer's filament and put it in his light bulb. And that's what made the light bulb work. And it still works today. The filament is still there. The light bulb is still there. But it tells us about critical race facts. Not theory, but fact. It's a fact that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but it's also a fact that but for Louis Latimer's filament, that light bulb never would have worked. And that's what you have to do in your work. Sometimes you have to step outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes the ideas that will make you more effective will come from somebody who may not look like you. Skin color may be different, hair texture may be different. They may have been born and raised on a different side of town that you were, but it's the kind of information you need, the kind of contribution you need to make this conference better, to make your work back home better. And I hope that as we learn about all the mechanisms that can make us more effective professionals, we'll learn some things that will make us better people. That, in the final analysis, is what this conference is all about. Helping to make our communities better, helping to make our professions better, but also helping to make us better people. So thank you guys so much for continuing your great work. I hope that things will occur throughout the year that allow us to meet together in person next year. And hopefully the schedule will be of such that I can be there in person with you. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Melinda. And thanks to the rest of you for all that you have done, not just for your communities, but in the memory of Dr. David Rivers, who is not just a friend, but a very good friend to each and every one of us. Godspeed.